Ma'am, let's not make this harder than it already is. We can't just hand over $75,000 to someone dressed like that and expect it's legitimate. You should probably leave before this becomes a situation. Those were the exact words, clear, cold, and publicly humiliating, spoken by Marcus Benton, the branch manager of Southside Bank in Charlotte, North Carolina, not whispered, not implied, said loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. The room didn't go silent. It went still, the kind of still that happens right before a thunderclap. What Marcus didn't realize in that moment was that the woman he just insulted wasn't some confused customer or lost pedestrian. In exactly 15 minutes, the truth about who she was and who she was married to would flip the fate of every employee in that room upside down. But before we get into that, where are you watching from? Leave your city in the comments below. And if this moment stopped you in your tracks like it did everyone in that banking hall, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's rewind to how it all began. Her name was Danielle Harper. She walked into Southside Bank on a regular Thursday morning, dressed like any other working woman, simple cardigan, dark jeans, white sneakers. She wasn't flashy. She didn't carry a Louis Vuitton bag or wear a Rolex on her wrist. What she did carry was a purpose. She was there to withdraw $75,000 from her own account. A large sum. Yes, but not unexpected. The money had been wired in days before as part of a real estate closing scheduled that same afternoon. Danielle had done this before, at this very branch. Same account, same process. But this time, something shifted. The moment she approached the counter, she felt it, the pause, the raised eyebrow, the glance exchanged between the teller and the manager in the corner office. Rachel Knox, the teller, didn't greet her. No good morning. No welcome. Just a glance up and a thin, practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Danielle slid over her ID and debit card, calmly stating her request, a scheduled cash withdrawal prepared in advance. Rachel looked at the screen, then back at Danielle, and asked, "Are you sure this is the right account?" "This is quite a bit of money," Danielle answered. "Yes, I'm sure. The funds cleared last Friday. I called ahead, and I was told everything would be ready." Rachel frowned, looked over her shoulder, and signaled to the manager. A moment later, Marcus Benton stepped up to the counter. Late 40s, graying temples, and an expression that suggested every customer was guilty until proven otherwise. He didn't introduce himself, didn't even ask Danielle her name. He simply looked her over, top to bottom, then said, "We've had some incidents lately, large cash withdrawals tied to identity theft. Do you have any other documentation besides this ID?" Danielle blinked slowly. "I have the confirmation email from your office, and I've been banking here for 6 years. What exactly are you trying to say?" Marcus crossed his arms. "I'm saying we don't just hand over that kind of money to anyone who walks in without verifying the source, the identity, and the purpose." That's when it happened. The quote you heard at the beginning. Danielle stared at him in disbelief, then asked, "Is this how you treat everyone? Or just people who look like me?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. Rachel was already sliding her ID into a plastic sleeve and placing it in the drawer. "We'll need to hold on to this while we verify," she said. Danielle remained calm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm out. She simply looked down at her watch, 10:14 a.m., and reached into her purse. One tap on her phone. One name, David H., primary. The call rang once, twice. Connected. Her voice didn't tremble. "It's me," she said. "They're doing it again. I'm at Southside." On the other end of the line, her husband answered with quiet certainty. "I'll be there in 10. Danielle ended the call and placed her phone back into her purse. She turned back to Rachel and Marcus. I'm not going anywhere, and I'd appreciate it if you processed my request instead of profiling me." Marcus narrowed his eyes, leaning just slightly closer across the counter. "You're free to wait, but if this turns out to be a fraudulent attempt, we reserve the right to involve law enforcement." Behind her, a few customers had started to pay attention. One of them, a woman named Maya, was already filming discreetly, phone angled low but lens wide open. Another man in a suit whispered to his wife. "This doesn't feel right." Danielle said nothing else. She stepped back from the counter and stood tall, hands folded, eyes calm. She had nothing to prove, but she knew what was coming. And Marcus? He had no idea what kind of storm was walking straight into his lobby. Rachel's acrylic nails clacked against her keyboard. Quick, impatient taps that told the lobby she wasn't looking for answers, only reasons to delay, and every tap seemed to echo off the marble columns as the minutes crawled past. Tightening around Danielle like a too small collar, no one cared to loosen, while Marcus hovered behind the teller line reviewing printouts that, to any objective eye, already proved the withdrawal was legitimate but, to him, merely provided more ink to question. He whispered to Rachel about patterns and risk scores. Code words Danielle had heard enough times in her life to translate instantly into the one thing no bank brochure ever prints in bold: prejudice. A low murmur spread through the room as customers waited, some curious, some uneasy. Yet Marcus treated the lobby as his private stage, stepping out from behind the counter to announce, in that civic leader tone reserved for ribbon cuttings and reprimands, that, in light of recent fraud attempts, the branch was exercising heightened protocols, a phrase that sounded official but really meant stalling. He invited Danielle to sit on a faux leather bench near the exit, away from the cameras, away from the line of business casual patrons who kept glancing over their shoulders. And when she declined, Marcus's jaw flexed, annoyed that she refused even that small relocation meant to shrink her presence. Security guard Eric Lewis ambled over, shoulders like cinder blocks under a navy blazer 2 sizes too small, and positioned himself 6 feet away, neither threatening nor friendly, carrying an earpiece linked to the back office speaker, squawking half-audible phrases like ID hold and call regional. Danielle felt the temperature drop, not in degrees, but in dignity, as Rachel used a felt marker to write potential fraud on a post-it that she stuck beside the screen, then dialed an internal extension. Danielle noted every detail, mentally photographing the color of the note, the shine of the marker, the way Rachel covered the mouthpiece to say, "Her account activity looks clean, but look at her." That single clause, "look at her," hung in the air, sticky and unmistakable. Long after Rachel resumed her hushed conversation, Danielle checked her watch, 10:25 a.m. She pictured David threading uptown traffic with calm precision, 10 minutes out, maybe less, and let that image steady her pulse. Across from the teller pods, Maya Brown braced her phone against her purse to keep filming hands-free. Viewers ticked upward, 15, 30, almost 50, as strangers online typed furious comments. "That's illegal. File a complaint. Stay strong, sis." Their tiny digital voices forming a distant but welcome choir. Behind Marcus, a junior associate, Tanya Lopez, early 20s, nerves visible in the way she twisted her name badge chain, pulled up the day's appointment ledger and frowned. She tugged at Marcus's sleeve to whisper that an advance cash order was logged under Danielle's account, but he brushed her off with a sharp flick of his wrist, whisper shouting, "Stay in your lane, Lopez. Compliance trumps convenience." Danielle caught the exchange and offered Tanya a small, grateful nod. Tanya's cheeks flushed red, a mix of fear and resolve, before she retreated to her cubicle, eyes lingering on the scene like she might yet step back in. Another 5 minutes vanished. A man in a pinstriped suit, restless in line, asked a teller why one customer was getting special treatment, and Rachel, sensing empathy was no longer required, replied loud enough for Danielle to hear. "We have to be sure the funds truly belong to her." The pronoun thrust like a finger. Marcus, emboldened, delivered his next line with courtroom drama flair. "If you wish to remove that much cash, ma'am, you need private bank clearance first. And frankly, our private team handles clients who fit a very specific profile." Danielle inhaled slowly, remembering advice her grandfather once gave. "Never fight a pig in mud. You'll both get dirty and the pig'll enjoy it." But she also remembered another lesson. The truth isn't mud. So she spoke clearly, measuring each syllable. "I meet every requirement listed in your policy binder. Page 36, identification, account tenure, advance notice. Your hesitation isn't about rules, it's about assumptions." For the first time, Eric's gaze flickered, as if weighing which side of the invisible line he stood on. Marcus ignored the comment, instructed Rachel to flag the transaction pending corporate approval, and ordered Eric to escort Mrs. Harper to the waiting area until further notice. Eric shifted his weight. Unsure, Danielle, calm yet unyielding, replied, "I'll remain right here in full view. Any further delay will be documented." She tapped her purse, a subtle reminder that her phone still sat inside, a silent witness already ringing alarm bells in higher offices. Somewhere near the doors, the automatic scent diffuser puffed vanilla into the air, a corporate attempt at comfort that now smelled like cheap cover for something rotten. At 10:30, the front doors opened again. Not David yet, but an elderly couple entering to deposit pension checks. They paused, sensing tension, then shuffled toward the kiosk while eyeing Danielle with sympathetic confusion. Marcus, eager to appear busy, greeted the couple with exaggerated warmth. Proof, Danielle mused. That courtesy was available, just rationed, back at the counter. Rachel hung up her phone, scribbled a note, and announced, "Regional compliance needs 30 more minutes." A statement Danielle knew was nonsense because Harper Financial's compliance office operated in a different time zone and, more importantly, because Danielle's husband ran that office by proxy. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips that rattled Rachel more than any protest could. Rachel's eyes darted toward Marcus, silently asking what to do next. Marcus doubled down. "Mrs. Harper," he said, voice lowering as if to suggest confidentiality, though everyone within 10 feet could hear. "We're prepared to file a suspicious activity report if you insist on pressing this. That will freeze your funds for up to 72 hours. Are you sure you want to risk that inconvenience?" Danielle opened her purse, removed a business card, and slid it across the counter. "Here's something faster than 72 hours, she said. "It's the closing agent expecting my certified funds at 11 o'clock. When this delay costs me the property, I'll forward the damages claim directly to your risk department." Marcus barely glanced at the card before flicking it back. "Threats won't speed verification," Danielle answered. "Truth isn't a threat. It's a mirror." Behind her, Maya's phone chimed again. 100 viewers now. Comment stream racing so fast the words blurred. Tanya emerged from her cubicle, hands trembling but voice clear. "Manager Benton, I found the confirmation email from Mr. Darby. Cash order number A361. It's in the shared drive." Marcus glared. "I said compliance is checking." Tanya stood her ground. A small act, but seismic in that space. Danielle nodded to her appreciatively. A crack had formed in the stone wall of Marcus's certainty. Seconds later, a deep engine hum outside signaled a car pulling to the curb. Danielle's pulse steadied, anticipation replacing every trace of doubt, because she recognized the sound of David's Mercedes even through thick glass. Inside, Eric's radio buzzed with a dispatcher's question, but he ignored it, eyes fixed on the entrance as if sensing change in the air. Marcus, oblivious, instructed Rachel to make a copy of Danielle's ID for records. Rachel obeyed, yet her hands now shook enough to blur the photocopy. The lobby lights seemed suddenly brighter, exposing every wrinkle in Marcus's frown, every bead of sweat at his temple. Danielle breathed in, breathed out, and watched the seconds tick toward 10:31, knowing the next person to walk through those doors would bring not just proof of her identity, but judgment on everyone who had mistaken respect for a privilege they could grant, or withhold, based solely on appearance. Rachel marched the photocopy back to the counter, paper still warm, edges quivering in her grip, and placed it beside Danielle's debit card as though the extra sheet added weight to her argument, while Marcus kept drumming a pen against the laminate like a cheap metronome. Louder each time someone in line murmured their impatience. The lobby had tipped from curious buzz to open frustration. Yet Marcus refused to read the room, announcing that banking integrity requires diligence, as if the phrase were a magic spell that excused every slight. Even though everyone watching knew integrity had left the building 10 minutes ago, Maya Brown's live stream ticked past 200 viewers, overflow chat spilling comments. This is pure discrimination. File a CFPB complaint. And with each ping of Maya's phone, Marcus's jaw tightened. Because nothing rattles a man who hides behind policy quite like policy being scrutinized by a public that can quote it better than he can. Tanya Lopez, still clutching a printout of the confirmed cash order, tried once more, voice firm enough to make Eric the guard swivel. Manager Benton, corporate guidelines say advance orders over $50,000 must be released within 15 minutes of identity verification. Page 7 of the cash handling manual, Marcus retorted without turning. Guidelines aren't law. Ms. Lopez, I'm the law in this branch today. The sentence landed hard, equal parts arrogance and confession, and Danielle felt every eye swing back to her, some sympathetic, some merely hungry for drama. She straightened, smoothed her cardigan, and spoke loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear. If a single person in this room thinks I've failed to prove who I am, say so now. Otherwise, the delay here is prejudice, not policy. Silence followed, thick as honey, broken only by the whir of aging ceiling vents. The elderly couple depositing pension checks looked at Marcus, then at Danielle, then shuffled deliberately to stand behind her. A quiet show of solidarity that made Rachel glance away, cheeks coloring. Marcus pivoted to Eric. Escort Mrs. Harper to the conference room, now. Eric hesitated, just a flicker, but visible, and Danielle seized that gap. Sure, she said evenly. I'll go anywhere the cameras can follow, including my attorneys. She gestured toward the line of smartphones now openly raised. Marcus faltered, realizing a back office removal would look like an admission of guilt, yet pride kept him from backing down. Instead, he picked up Danielle's debit card, held it up as if displaying contraband, and declared, Until headquarters clears this, these funds are frozen. At that, a woman in a floral scarf halfway down the teller row called out, I've banked here 20 years, never seen anyone treated like this. And the man in the pinstripe suit added, Not unless they're wearing jeans. Apparently. Marcus, hearing authority slip, leaned across the counter, voice low but seething. You're escalating this for no reason. Walk out now, and we avoid further complications. Danielle's reply was calm enough to chill the room. Complications arrive the moment you judge my balance by my sneakers. She glanced at the entrance. No David yet. But through the glass, she saw the black Mercedes now idling at the curb, and felt a quiet surge of relief. Maya's stream crossed 300 viewers. Someone typed. Local news desk here. Permission to use footage? Maya whispered yes without breaking her shot. Rachel, Sensing ground shift, tried a different tack, offering a placating smile. Mrs. Harper, maybe a cashier's check instead? Smaller cash portion? We can revisit Monday? Danielle cocked her head, voice still courteous. I'm closing on property at 11. Cash is non-negotiable by contract. Are you offering to pay my penalty when I'm late? The question hung like smoke. Tanya tapped Marcus's elbow again and hissed. Sir, corporate compliance line just lit up. It's a 704 number. Direct, Marcus snapped. Send it to voicemail. Though the tremor in his hand betrayed the mask, he knew exactly whose number that was. Charlotte headquarters, less than 4 miles away. The front doors hissed open. Not David. 2 teenagers picking up forms, yet the mere gush of outside air made everyone glance over. Eric shifted, 1 foot half turning toward Danielle as though reconsidering his assignment. Danielle offered him a measured smile. You don't have to stand guard, she said softly. Just stand fair. The line buzzed with whispered agreement. Enough, Marcus barked, clapping his hands like an irritated maitre d'. All customers not involved in this transaction, please step back from the teller stations. No one moved. Even Rachel looked uncertain now, fingers frozen above her keyboard. It was 10:32 and change, 1 minute before David's 10-minute promise expired, when Marcus lost the last shred of composure and pulled out a dated branch manual, flipping pages with theatrical purpose until he stabbed at a paragraph. Section 11. Discretionary holds for suspicious activity. That's my right. Danielle leaned closer, reading upside down. Finish the sentence. Marcus. Suspicious activity as determined by verifiable discrepancies in identification or account records. You found none. He slammed the manual shut. You're free to file a complaint after you leave. Danielle straightened, chin high. I'll file it in person. In the president's suite? Marcus laughed, a brittle sound. Our president isn't taking walk-ins. Danielle met his gaze. He is today. The front doors whispered again. A hush rippled from the vestibule forward as every head turned. Danielle didn't need to look. The shift in air pressure, the collective inhale, told her everything. Outside. The Mercedes engine cut, and a tall silhouette approached the threshold with the calm purpose of someone used to fixing problems others thought unfixable. Danielle's pulse slowed, steady as a second hand ticking right on time. Marcus, sensing something but not grasping what, squared his shoulders and faced the entrance, prepared to defend his dominion, unaware that the next footsteps crossing that tile would redraw every boundary he believed unbreakable. The lobby doors parted and in walked a tall black man in an impeccably cut navy suit. No entourage, no briefcase. Just a quiet assurance in the way he carried himself and a sidelong glance that took in every detail from the potential fraud posted on Rachel's screen to the silent knot of customers huddled behind Danielle. He paused a single beat, as if cataloging the temperature of the room, then strolled toward the teller row with the unhurried stride of someone who had never been rushed a day in his life. A stride that made Eric the guard straighten instinctively and Marcus puff out his chest to reassert control he already sensed slipping. Sir, the line forms behind the blue marker, Rachel chirped, forcing a hostess smile even as her eyes flicked to Marcus for guidance. The man, David Harper, though no one here knew it yet, returned a courteous nod, stepped exactly to the blue marker, and waited, folding his hands loosely in front of him while scanning the screens behind the counter with a familiarity that should have made every employee take notice. Danielle felt rather than heard his arrival. Her shoulders dropped half an inch, a subtle shift Maya's camera didn't miss, but she kept her gaze fixed on Marcus, allowing the charade to play out. Marcus, eager to display efficiency to the newcomer, turned his back on Danielle, grabbed a laminated pamphlet, and stepped up to David with a salesman's grin. "Good morning, sir. Private Client Services. How can we assist you today?" David's smile was polite, but faint. The kind you offer when someone mistakes courtesy for compliance. "Actually," he said in a voice mellow yet carrying, "I'm here about the private client experience, but I'd like to watch yours for a moment." Marcus blinked, unsure whether he'd been complimented or challenged, so he defaulted to routine. "If you're waiting for the next available representative, feel free to enjoy our lounge." David's eyes moved to the bottled water fridge, which, moments earlier, Marcus had denied Danielle, then back to Marcus. "I'm comfortable here." 2 heartbeats of silence followed, long enough for Rachel to glance nervously at Tanya, long enough for the pinstripe suit customer to whisper, "Watch this." Under his breath, David shifted his attention to Danielle, gave her a small nod, half greeting, half inquiry, as though they were casual acquaintances, then addressed Marcus again. "Looks like she's been here a while. Complicated withdrawal?" Marcus exhaled through his nose. "We're verifying a large cash request. Standard risk protocols." David raised an eyebrow. "Protocols, I assume, work the same for every customer?" "Of course." Marcus answered too quickly, pen still tapping. David's gaze slid to the potential fraud note. "Interesting marker you keep handy." Rachel's cheeks flushed. She peeled the post-it off the monitor, crumpled it, and stuffed it in her blazer pocket. Maya's livestream chat popped. He called them out. Tanya, emboldened, cleared her throat. "Manager Benton, our 15-minute limit is passed." Marcus shot her a warning glare, but David turned to Tanya with a warm, measured nod that said, "I see you." He addressed Marcus once more. "Would it help to escalate? I know a few people downtown." The offer sounded casual, yet something in the cadence hinted at authority deeper than local connections. Marcus straightened. "Appreciate it, sir, but we follow a chain of command." "So do I," David replied, eyes calm as pond water. "That's why I'm here. In the chain." Danielle couldn't help the slight curve at the corner of her mouth. It lasted only a breath, but it reached Tanya, who took a step forward, shoulders squared. Marcus noticed Tanya's movement, misread it as insubordination again, and barked. "Back to your station." The reprimand cracked through the lobby, brittle as old wood. A couple near the kiosk froze mid-signature. David's expression didn't change, but the lobby swore it felt cooler. "Interesting leadership style," he murmured. Marcus bristled. "And your name, sir?" "David," he said, leaving the surname hanging like a riddle. Maya's phone vibrated, her viewers speculating, "That's gotta be the husband," the elderly woman in the floral scarf whispered. "I hope so." Danielle folded her arms, not defensive, simply ready. Rachel broke the stalemate with a tentative offer. "Sir, if your business is urgent." "It is," David said, still gentle. "Urgent that I see whether this branch honors its own guidelines." He gestured to Danielle's file on the counter. "May I?" Without waiting, he lifted the folder, flipped to the cash order form Tanya had printed, and traced a line with one fingertip. "Order number A361. Prepared. Approved. Logged. All signatures present. I'd release that cash." Rachel swallowed. Marcus snatched the folder back. "Sir, you've overstepped. That document is private." "Privacy," David echoed softly, then nodded at Maya's camera. "You surrendered privacy when you humiliated a client in public view." The statement, calm as it was, made Eric's hand drift toward his radio. David glanced at him, one measured look, and Eric let the radio drop. Marcus's voice rose half a notch, the faux authority fraying. "I'm calling corporate to confirm." David's phone was already in his hand. He dialed 3 digits, hit speaker, and waited. A crisp voice answered, "Harper Financial Group, Executive Office." David spoke plainly, Patch me to Charlotte Regional Compliance. Marcus's eyes went wide. Rachel's fingers stilled. The line clicked, and a new voice, older, steady, said, "Mr. Harper, we're on—" David didn't break eye contact with Marcus. "I'm at Southside Branch observing a withdrawal hold far past protocol. Start recording." A quiet, "Yes, sir," came through the speaker. David ended the call, slid the phone into his pocket, and offered Marcus a final chance. "Release the funds. Apologize to the lady, and we can chalk this up to a rough morning." Marcus puffed himself up, unaware he'd stepped to the edge of a cliff. "You have no authority here." David's smile was almost kind. "Authority is the least of what I have." Behind him, the front doors opened again. Tina Morales entered at a brisk pace, laptop under one arm, badge visible, her presence underscoring what Marcus refused to see. David gave Danielle another small nod. A silent ready? She inclined her head, matching poise with poise. The clock above the teller line flipped to 10:34. 15 minutes had passed since Danielle's quiet phone call. The next words David spoke would tip the balance, but for now he simply straightened his cuff, looked Marcus square in the eye, and said, "I've seen enough." Tina Morales's heels clicked a metronome across the lobby tiles as she strode in, flipped open her slim laptop on the service desk, and brought up a live compliance dashboard that glowed red with escalating incident flags. Every second the line charts ticked higher, reflecting Maya Brown's growing livestream feed and the internal pings from head office. David Harper, still wearing that patient half-smile, watched Marcus Benton glance toward the screen and pale at the realization that corporate was, quite literally, watching him in real time. "Marcus," Tina said, her voice calm but edged with finality. "Executive Risk is on standby for an incident termination order. Would you like to brief them yourself?" Marcus drew a shaky breath, eyes flicking from the laptop to Danielle, still standing tall, still silent, and then to David, who removed a slim leather wallet from his jacket and placed a black metal card on the counter with a soft clink. The card read, "David A. Harper, Chief Executive Officer, Harper Financial Group." Every customer within earshot inhaled as one. Rachel Knox's knees seemed to sag, and Eric Lewis went statue still, earpiece crackling unanswered. David folded his hands. "Let me be crystal clear," he said, voice low enough to force the room quiet. "This branch, this bank, this entire network reports to the office printed on that card. And the woman you've labeled potential fraud is my wife and co-owner, Danielle Harper, the same Danielle whose deposits and withdrawals built the liquidity ratios you brag about at quarterly meetings." Gasps rippled. Maya's phone nearly vibrated out of her hands as chat counters exploded, comments screaming in all caps disbelief. Marcus opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to invent a last-second policy. But Danielle's voice cut clean through the tension, composed yet ringing with authority she'd never once needed to raise. "Here's a free lesson before you box up your cubicles. Mr. Benton, never judge a person's worth by their wardrobe, their accent, or the color of their skin, especially when you have no idea who's standing in front of you." She paused exactly long enough for the words to settle on every conscience, then added, "Because you've just taught every customer here that your integrity checks are nothing more than a mirror of your own prejudice." The floral scarf grandmother dabbed her eyes. The pinstripe man exhaled a soft wow. Even Eric looked down, shame blooming across his features. David pivoted toward Tina. "Initiate branch-level terminations for Marcus Benton, Rachel Knox, and, insofar as physical intimidation was used, Eric Lewis, effective immediately." Tina's fingers flew across the keyboard. 3 red icons flashed. Access badges disabled in less than 10 keystrokes. A dull metallic beep sounded from the belt pager Eric wore, followed by a red light on the security panel. He'd been locked out of the building systems before he could utter a defense. Rachel's workstation logged her out mid-screen, her eyes filled with tears as the terminal projected "Access denied." Marcus, face burning, sputtered. "You can't just... There's a process. HR. HR is waiting on the mezzanine," David replied. "They have your exit packets printed and notarized." He raised his voice a notch, addressing the lobby at large. "Ladies and gentlemen, if today's events delayed your banking needs, I apologize. You deserve better than a branch culture that decides service by zip code and wardrobe." He nodded to Tanya Lopez, whose trembling had turned to determined calm. "Ms. Lopez, as of this moment, you are interim branch manager. Please escort our guests to windows 2 and 3. We will waive all fees for anyone delayed more than 10 minutes. Applause burst, first cautious, then hearty. While cameras pivoted from the fallen to the newly risen, Marcus's eyes darted to the exit, but Tina spoke without looking up. "Security will escort you once you sign acknowledgement of termination. Refusal is documented as well," Rachel whispered a plea. "I was just following instructions." Yet Danielle met her gaze with measured empathy. "Following unjust orders is still a choice," she said. "And today you chose poorly." The floral scarf woman stepped forward, offering Danielle the bottled water she herself had just been handed, murmuring, "Thank you for standing up. For all of us." Danielle accepted with a grateful nod, then addressed the room. "No one should need a title to access their own money. We're fixing that today." David turned back to Marcus one final time. "Consider this your exit interview. What do you think the lesson is?" Marcus swallowed, eyes watery, voice a rasp. "Don't misjudge a customer." David tilted his head. "Close. The lesson is, don't misjudge anyone." He gestured toward the live chat feed on Maya's phone, now past 600 viewers. "Because these days, even the quietest lobby has 1,000 witnesses." He extended his hand toward Danielle. She took it, and together they walked past the paralyzed teller line toward Tanya's station, the crowd parting with quiet respect. For the first time all morning, Danielle's original request was processed. Bundles of crisp bills counted, verified, slid across the glass. Tanya placed the stack in a discreet cash envelope, offered a steady, "Congratulations on your closing, Mrs. Harper," and the lobby erupted in another wave of applause, softer but deeper, the relief of an ecosystem correcting itself in real time. As Danielle tucked the envelope into her purse, she looked back at the cameras and the stunned faces behind them and said just loud enough, "Equity isn't a slogan on a brochure. It's a decision you make when no one's supposed to be watching." And with that, she and David exited through the same glass doors she'd entered, leaving behind a lobby forever changed and a staff still trying to comprehend how a bias that took mere seconds to speak had cost them everything in less than a quarter of an hour. Upstairs in the mezzanine conference room, glass walls overlooking a lobby still buzzing with aftershocks, David Harper flipped a switch on a speakerphone, turning a local showdown into a nationwide reckoning, while Danielle stood beside him, purse still holding the envelope of cash she'd fought for, ready now to fight for something bigger, reform. On the other end of the line, regional VPs, compliance attorneys, and the full board's ethics committee logged in, their screens lighting the dark mahogany table where Tina Morales had already connected her laptop. Red flag dashboards replaced by a fresh slide titled Zero Bias Banking Initiative. "We're not just firing people," David began, voice calm yet charged with a Secretary of State clarity that stilled every sidebar whisper on the call. "We're rebuilding the culture that let today happen." He laid out a rapid-fire plan. Southside Branch would close for 48 hours, not as a cover-up but a cleanup. Every customer transaction from the last 18 months, cash orders, loan denials, fee reversals, would be audited for discriminatory patterns, and starting Monday, An independent civil rights consultancy would conduct walkthroughs of all 112 Harper Bank branches, using secret shopper protocols to test whether employee behavior matched policy or prejudice. Tanya Lopez, still blinking at the speed of her own promotion, listened as David named her interim branch manager, then surprised her further by handing Danielle the floor. Danielle spoke in measured cadence, the kind teachers use when every sentence matters. Policies are only as strong as the people willing to enforce them. From today forward, every teller, every guard, every manager will sign a dignity pledge that says, "I will serve every customer with equal respect. No exceptions, no excuses. Break it once, and you're done." No one argued, even the CFO, who hinted at the cost of full-scale retraining, quieted when Danielle replied, "The cost of ignoring bias is what you saw downstairs, a trust deficit we can't afford." Tina cued the next slide, listing mandatory workshops, unconscious bias drills for frontline staff, scenario reenactments using footage from Maya Brown's live stream, already topping 500,000 views under the hashtag #BankingWithoutBias, and monthly town hall calls where employees could report discriminatory behavior straight to Danielle's office without fear of retaliation. David added one more measure, a permanent customer feedback kiosk in every branch, hardwired to an independent server so no local manager could bury complaints again. While corporate signed off, Tanya hustled down to the lobby, clipboard in hand, nerves replaced by steel, and announced free cashier's checks and expedited teller service for everyone still waiting. She opened the employee fridge, handed out the bottled water Marcus once rationed, and posted an apology letter on the door explaining the temporary closure and the bank's intent to re-earn community trust. Customers lined up to shake her hand, some slipping business cards her way. One retired colonel saluted her initiative, saying, "Leadership isn't a title, ma'am, it's a response." Back upstairs, the board voted unanimously to adopt the zero bias plan, one executive noting the public relations upside, another admitting it was simply the right thing, long overdue. Communications drafted a press statement citing swift, decisive action led by CEO David Harper and co-owner Danielle Harper. But Danielle insisted on simpler language. "We failed today. We're fixing it, starting now." By noon, the statement topped local news feeds, and reporters camped outside Southside's doors captured employees emerging with boxed cupcakes Tanya had ordered. Because small gestures, she said, mattered as much as grand ones. David authorized a hardship stipend for hourly staff affected by the 2-day shutdown, telling payroll, "No one loses pay for leadership's mistakes." Meanwhile, Danielle sketched the bones of a new program on a legal pad, Banking with Honor, a quarterly report card grading each branch on equity metrics, complaint resolution time, demographic service parity, community outreach hours, fail twice, leadership changed, succeed, and bonuses flowed. By 3 p.m., compliance teams were booking flights. By 6, Maya's footage had aired on the evening news beside stock photos of smiling tellers under the headline, "Bank Turns Bias into Breakthrough." Commentators marveled at how 15 minutes of disrespect birthed the most sweeping policy shift the bank had seen in 50 years. That night, David and Danielle sat in their kitchen, the day's adrenaline settling like dust after demolition. The envelope of cash, purpose fulfilled, rested on the counter. In its place on the table lay printouts of the new dignity pledge, ready for CEO signatures at dawn. Danielle traced the first line with her fingertip. "Respect is non-negotiable," and exhaled a quiet promise that tomorrow, when she addressed every Harper Bank employee via live stream, she'd make sure those words were more than ink. They'd be the foundation of a culture where no customer, no matter how they looked, would ever have to fight this fight again. 3 months later, Southside Bank no longer resembled the place where Danielle Harper had been profiled. humiliated, and forced to defend her right to access her own money. The marble floor was still polished, the logo still gold-leafed, but something far more important had changed: the silence. It no longer carried suspicion, it carried respect. Customers walked in with confidence, not caution. Tellers greeted each person by name, not by judgment. And behind the newly renovated counter stood Tanya Lopez, now permanently promoted to branch manager, her posture tall, her voice steady, her leadership defined not by years in a chair, but by how she stood up when others stayed quiet. On the wall to her right hung a small framed plaque, simple and understated. This bank belongs to everyone, no exceptions. Just below it was a photo of Danielle Harper, not in designer clothes or staged lighting, but the exact photo snapped from Maya Brown's viral live stream, captured the moment Danielle refused to back down. The quote printed beneath read, "Never mistake quiet for weak. Never mistake dignity for permission." Harper Financial Group had changed, not just the signs or the slogans, but the systems. Every branch now reported monthly bias audits. Anonymous complaint terminals were standard, as were rotating mystery shoppers trained by civil rights experts. Hiring panels became more diverse. Training went beyond HR slides and into real-world simulations, including a replay of Danielle's incident played at every onboarding. What began as a scandal had become a standard, and not one employee could claim ignorance. They knew the story, they knew the lesson, and they knew the consequences. But perhaps the most lasting shift came from customers. Seniors who had quietly accepted decades of microaggressions now found themselves greeted with eye contact and real attention. Immigrant families no longer had to over-explain simple transactions. And young black and brown professionals walked in with the quiet knowledge that someone had already pushed the door open for them and refused to let it shut again. Danielle, for her part, stayed mostly out of the spotlight. She didn't crave media tours or corporate ceremonies, but when invited to speak at the Harper Financial Summit later that year, she stood on stage, calm and composed, looked out at 500 executives from across the country, and began her keynote with words no one expected. "I'm not here because I'm the CEO's wife. I'm here because someone underestimated me, and I decided not to let that moment end with just an apology." The room sat in absolute stillness. "Banking isn't just about numbers," she said. "It's about who we trust, who we listen to, who we believe when they say, 'This is my account.' And if that belief changes based on skin tone, outfit, or zip code, then we are no longer managing money. We're managing bias." Her speech ended not with applause, but with standing silence. Executives rising to their feet not in celebration, but in reflection. Afterward, Maya Brown met Danielle backstage, now a full-time DEI consultant, her phone tucked in her purse for once. "I never thought I'd be part of something like that," she said. Smiling, Danielle smiled back. "You didn't just film it, you amplified it. You helped us all see it." As for Marcus Benton, Rachel Knox, and Eric Lewis, they had moved on, some quietly, others angrily, but their names had become a kind of internal shorthand, a reminder that the cost of bias wasn't just moral, it was professional. In meetings, when someone hesitated to speak up about a pattern or a problem, a colleague would quietly say, "Don't go the Benton route." And that was enough. And perhaps that was Danielle's greatest legacy, not the firings, not even the reforms, but the fact that silence had been replaced by awareness, and awareness by action. The bank would never be perfect. No institution is, but now, it had a memory, and it had her voice etched into its foundation. Quiet, clear, permanent. Thank you for watching today's story. If it moved you, share it. And remember, dignity doesn't ask for permission. It stands, it speaks, it changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe for more.